Good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Love. I am the Director of Products here in the Research and Evaluation Group at the Public Health Management Corporation in Philadelphia. Today's training is going to last approximately 2 hours, as Rob mentioned. We are going to start off with a brief PowerPoint presentation, talk a little bit about the background on the development of the RANT and the DUI RANT, and then we're going to get it into the software itself, review all the features and functionality, and go over all of the items one at a time, discuss the intent of the items, the coding rules, provide some examples, discuss how to produce reports. I'll also go over some of like the frequently asked questions, and you all can just sit back and relax. As Rob mentioned, this is going to be recorded, and I'll be controlling everything on my end. So without further ado, let's get started. Rob had mentioned, for me to give a little bit of background. I have been with the Treatment Research Institute and now continue to be with the Public Health Management Corporation. In September, it will be 25 years. So for the past going on, I guess, 15 years, I have been the Director of Products. Since the RANT was launched, I have been involved that whole time. So here, let's get started. So something just as a brief introduction, something you all are well aware of is the fact that problem-solving courts have been found to be one of the most effective approaches for helping substance-using offenders. They've been shown to reduce criminal recidivism, increase abstinence rates, and improve psychosocial functioning. And one of the things our scientists, first at the Treatment Research Institute, and now that TRI and PHMC have merged, we now continue to do here at the Public Health Management Corporation is focus on helping courts continue to evolve, continue to improve, and reach greater levels of efficacy, efficiency, and cost savings. So one of the problems our scientists took a look at is the fact that drug and alcohol use and criminal justice behaviors are very complex problems. They can vary greatly from person to person and require more individualized approaches. Because a one-size-fits-all approach, where all clients receive the same level of criminal justice supervision and treatment, that may lead to lost opportunities for success, misallocation of resources, where some clients get too many resources and others don't get enough. And it's actually, research has shown it can have negative, or what we call iatrogenic effects. So the solution our scientists came up with the client triaging, because by triaging clients, they can be matched to the optimal level of treatment services and criminal justice supervision. And when we're talking about triaging, it's similar to triaging that's done in an emergency room, where clients are quickly and briefly screened and they're pointed in the right direction. And by triaging, this helps to ensure that clients receive more accurate placement and that the system runs more efficiently. And we say, ideally, matching should be done as soon as possible after point of arrest to ensure those optimal outcomes and preserve those valuable resources. And this only makes sense. The earlier that you can triage a client and move them in the right direction, you're preserving valuable resources. You're saving, personnel time, you're saving the client's time. And, when you start moving folks down the right road, you're helping to ensure those optimal outcomes. Now, we certainly recognize that, every court has their own, protocols and procedures in place. So, and sometimes you have to do certain things before you can conduct a triage interview. But we're just suggesting, when you do figure out what time that is, trying to do it as soon as possible in the process. So our scientists knew that they wanted to develop a triage tool. Okay. And because our scientists are experts at developing tools, and when I say tool, I mean an interview, a survey, a questionnaire, that they decided to develop, a tool. And they named it the RANT, standing for the Risk and Needs Triage. And when they were designing the tool, they knew that effective outcomes depend on correctly matching clients on two primary factors: criminogenic risk and clinical need. And research provides lots of useful data on which clients are best suited for which type of programs. And much of that research was done by our scientists, first when they were at the Treatment Research Institute, and continue to do that research at PHMC. And the references you can see at the bottom of the screen are from peer-reviewed journal articles written by our scientists. Dr. Karen Dugash was a senior scientist for many years at TRI. She came over during the merger to PHMC, and she heads our addiction research department here in the research and evaluation group. Dr. David Festinger was a senior scientist for many years at TRI, also came over during the merger, but suddenly and sadly passed away in November of 2021. And Dr. Doug Marlowe was a senior scientist for many years at TRI before leaving to become the chief of science, law, and policy at NADCP, and he continues to be a senior consultant at NADCP. So let's talk about these two factors that our scientists knew that they wanted to include in the tool. The first one being criminogenic risks. Criminogenic risks are client characteristics that predict poorer outcomes in standard interventions. So when we're talking about risk measured in the RANT, we are not looking at a risk for violence. Rather, it is more of a risk for recidivism, but specifically, criminogenic risks are client characteristics that predict poor outcomes in standard interventions. And examples of criminogenic risks, most of which are included in the RANT, include being a younger age at time of arrest, having an earlier onset of criminal behavior, having an earlier onset of substance use, having prior rehabilitation failures, having a history of violence, meeting criteria for antisocial personality disorder, having a familial history of crime or addiction, and criminal associations. The second factor that the scientists knew they wanted to include in the tool are clinical needs. And these are factors that reduce criminal involvement if they are addressed. So examples of clinical needs that are included in the RANT and the DUI RANT are drug dependence or addiction, looking to see if it meets criteria for that by looking at the following symptomatology. Does the client report a binge pattern and loss of control? Do they report cravings or compulsions? Does the client meet criteria for withdrawal syndrome? We also look to see if the client has other collateral needs. Do they have a dual diagnosis? Do they have a chronic medical condition? Do they report homelessness and chronic unemployment? So our scientists knew what factors they wanted to include in the tool. Next, they needed to come up with a method to provide output for users. So, what would be included in the report? And they came up with this 2x2 quadrant matrix where clients score in one of the four quadrants. They score as either high or low risk and high or low needs. And each quadrant has a recommendation in regards to criminal justice supervision and treatment. So for example, let's look at the top left quadrant. Clients who score as high risk, high need. Research tells us because they're high risk, those clients require intensive criminal justice supervision and accountability. Because they're high needs, they require intensive treatment. Therefore, clients who score as high risk, high need require a combination of services, including intensive criminal justice supervision and accountability and treatment. Let's look at the top right quadrant. These are clients who score as low risk, high need. Because they are low risk, they don't require that intensive criminal justice supervision and accountability. However, they are high needs, therefore they do require treatment. Clients who score as high risk, low needs, again, because they're high risk, they require that intensive criminal justice supervision and accountability. However, they are not high needs, rather they are low needs, therefore they do not require intensive treatment. And finally, clients who score in the bottom right quadrant, who scores low risk, low need. Because they are low risk and not high risk, they do not require that intensive criminal justice supervision and accountability. Because they are low needs and are not high needs, they don't require that intensive treatment. Therefore, a secondary prevention program may be best suited for them. Research provides us with further information about what's appropriate for clients. So let's look at the top left quadrant, clients who score as high risk, high needs. I've already mentioned those clients require intensive criminal justice supervision. Therefore, we suggest they receive frequent status hearings. Because they're high needs, they require intensive treatment. Now, because they are high needs, they are likely physically dependent on substances. Therefore, we cannot expect them to be abstinent from the beginning of the program. However, we can expect them to comply with the program requirements. And if they don't, they should receive restrictive consequences. That's the accountability piece. Versus, let's look at clients in the bottom right quadrant who scores low risk, low needs. I've already mentioned a secondary prevention program may be best suited for them. Now, because they are low needs and are not high needs, they are likely not physically dependent on substances. Therefore, we can expect them to be abstinent from the beginning. In addition, because they are not high needs, they should not be required to attend AA or other 12-step meetings, nor should they be receiving motivational enhancement therapy. It's not appropriate for them. In addition, they should not be going to group therapy sessions with clients who score as high needs. They should be going to individual counseling or stratified groups. That's what research has told us. Now let's talk a little bit about the tool itself. Our scientists knew when they were developing it, they wanted this to be a brief tool. Again, this is a triage tool. This is a screener. This is not designed to take the place of a comprehensive drug and alcohol assessment, okay? Our scientists knew they wanted it to be web-based. All you would need is a computer or a laptop with internet access to be able to complete the tool. And then they wanted it to support decisions. Based upon their research, they came up with 19 items assessing risk and needs. They also wanted it to be appropriate for non-clinically trained staff. And this is important. We imagined from the beginning, this would be administered by probation officers or court staff. Now, we certainly have some courts and jurisdictions that do have clinically trained staff at the treatment providers administer the tool. And that's really just the protocol, the procedure that worked out best for them. But the important message here is you don't have to have a particular clinical training or certification to administer the tool properly. And we wanted it to provide immediate, easy to read reports that include recommendations regarding treatment and supervision, which it does. Now, because we're scientists and researchers first and foremost, of course, the psychometrics of the tool are very important to us. So we took a look at them and we found the tool has good internal consistency. We conducted an exploratory factor analysis that found it yield 2 factors representing risk and needs, which is what you want it to do. It is good predictive validity. We have published our results in a peer-reviewed journal, the Journal of Criminal Justice. And you can see the reference at the bottom of the screen. Importantly, it has also been independently and externally validated by multiple other organizations. Now, after the original RANT, which was designed for adult drug offenders, was developed, we developed the DUI RANT. And the reason we developed the DUI RANT is because DUI offenders are different than drug offenders. And we also developed it because most states and jurisdictions rely heavily on BAC level and the number of prior DUI offenses in making sentencing and treatment decisions. And that doesn't take into account many of the other important predictors of recidivism and markers of clinical need. And we knew from developing the RANT that, we had a lot of information on this that would help in triaging adult DUI offenders. So the DUI RANT, it extends the RANT solution by integrating robust predictors of DUI risk and need. Any of you that currently use both the RANT and the DUI RANT know that the software is very similar. There is overlap in the items where there's some items that are in both RANT and DUI RANT. However, there's some items that are in the RANT only and some items in the DUI RANT only. And we'll get into that further detail a little bit later in the training. So as far as implementation, the RANT and the DUI RANT have been very widely implemented. We're in over 450 courts across the country. We're in I believe at this point, we're in 13 states statewide, including your state, where all the adult drug courts and/or all the adult DUI courts utilize the tool. We're in all different types of courts, pre and post adjudication courts, felony and misdemeanor courts, veterans courts, sheriff departments, probation departments. And I am going to provide for you my email address. As Rob mentioned, Anna's going to be taking questions that you put into the chat and providing them to me so I can get back to you with answers. However, I also want to make sure that if you have questions after the training and would like to reach out, you can reach out to me directly at mlove@phmc.org. Or if ever you have questions while you're using the software, please reach out to our customer support team directly at rantsupport@phmc.org. We also have a toll-free telephone number, 866-453-9262. We're available from 8:30 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, excluding PHMC holidays, which are mostly very similar to what your court holidays are. And I can put this back up on the screen after the training if you would like to record that. All right, so we are now going to jump into the software. Now you're going to see that I am pulling up Chrome, the RANT and the DUI RANT software. It's been at least over a year that it was made compatible with Chrome and Edge, with the Internet Explorer coming to what they call end of life. Okay, so here we are on the RANT webpage. That's the software we're going to go into first. You might have noticed I typed in the web address, which is www.trirant.org/rant online. And when I pressed enter, it took me to a secure.phmcresearch.org site. And notice the little lock listed here. We use 128-bit SSL encryption to protect your client data. So it has directed you to an HTTPS site. Okay, this is similar to the security that's used with online banking and credit card websites. This is the login screen. If you're not currently a RANT user, for every court that has a RANT or DUI RANT license, there's one person that's the account manager. The account manager has the ability to add and remove users. So you would find out who the account manager is in your court. They will send you an email invitation to register. And setting up your RANT account or your DUI RANT account is a two-step process. First, you're going to enter in your first and last name. You're going to select a username. I generally suggest you select something like the first letter of your first name and then your full last name. So my username is mlove. Okay. You're also going to select a password and we'll talk about the requirements of that in a second, as well as a security question and answer. The reason being, if you forget your password, you're not going to be able to call our helpline and ask us for it because we're not going to have it. That's how we keep the site secure. So if you forget your password, you're going to come here to the login screen, click forget your password, and a window will pop open. It'll say forgot your password, enter your email address or username to receive your password. So I would enter in my username, then click the submit button. Another window is going to pop up, says answer the following question to receive your password. And my security question is street. Okay. So, I would answer that and click submit, and then I will get an email from the RANT system. Once you answer your security question properly with a very complicated password. It will be full of numbers and symbols. That'll be very difficult to replicate using your keyboard. We suggest you copy that from the email, paste it, then you'll be prompted, select your own password, okay? So that's just how you set up your account. Now, when you're creating your account, after you select your username, password, security question and answer, you're gonna get a second email from RANT asking you to activate your account. There will be a link in that second email that says activate. You'll click on it. Then you'll be able to go to www.trirant.org/rant online to log in. Now you have to receive that second email to activate your account for your account to be officially activated. So sometimes people contact us on the helpline and say, I set up my account, but I still can't log in. It's because you didn't get that second activate email. The purpose of that second activate email is to verify the accuracy of your email address, that you entered your email address in properly. Now, you know my username and password, so I'm going to log in. And then it takes us here to the main menu. Now, before I jump into this, I want to talk about some of the things you see in the right-hand corner. So anytime you see something with an underline, it is a link that when I click on it, a new window or page is going to pop open. So the very first link you see is my profile. And this is where you're going to go as a user to make any changes to your user profile. So it pops open to an account information page. If I click edit, I can update the spelling of my first or last name or update my email address. It's very important for you to always make sure that your accurate email address is in the RANT or DUI RANT system, because that's how we communicate with you. So just something to keep in mind. If for some reason your email address changed, please come into the system and update it. You'll notice that I can't update my username. Once you select your username, it cannot be updated. It's grayed out, so you will not be able to change that. Now, if I want to change my password, I click on the link there to the right, and the window pops open that says change your password. And it asks for my current password, and then it wants me to type in my new password and then confirm it. Anytime you're selecting a password with RANT, it must meet the following requirements. It must be between 7 and 15 characters long. It must have at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, one number, and one special character. Special characters like an ampersand, an exclamation point, a pound sign, okay? If you want to change your security question and answer, you would come in here, type in your current password, your new security question and answer, and click submit. Now, everybody has this link to delete your user account, but you're probably never going to use that. That's because your account manager is going to take care of your accounts. The account manager has a link in the top right-hand corner that says account manager. Now, I'm a support administrator because I have access to all the accounts so that I can, provide support to all of the users. But they'll have an account manager link. When they do that, when they click on that link, they can see all the current registered users, whether their accounts have been activated, and they can just with a click of a button deactivate a user or send an invitation for a new user to register. Now, the vast majority of the accounts in your state are the up to 5 user version, where you could have up to 5 users. Your account manager counts as a user, just so you're aware. Now, to the right of that support administrator link, again, unless you're the account manager, you will have an account manager link. But if you are not the account manager, you will not have any link there, okay? But to the right is a logout link. When I click on that, a window is going to pop open. It says click OK to log out. If I want to log out, I'll click OK. Otherwise, I'll click cancel. Now, I'm sure you all are used to Windows applications where if you take your cursor and you put it on the X in the top right-hand corner and click it, you could close the application. And I'm sure you're all used to doing that. Now, however, we would prefer that that's not how you shut down the RANT. We prefer that you formally, properly log out of the RANT using the logout link. Now, if you were to accidentally close down the application, clicking on the X, I want to assure you it's not the end of the world. You're not going to lose your data. You're not going to corrupt the system. Just try to always formally, properly log out of RANT using that red logout link. Now, let's go down to the links down here. The first one being terms of use. The very first time you log into RANT as a user, our standard, what we call EULA, end user agreement, is going to appear on the screen, okay? And essentially what you're agreeing to, and we require all users of our software applications to agree to these terms, is you're agreeing not to harm the website, okay? You're agreeing not to share your account or password information. It's very important that every user has their own unique username and password, and you do not share it with anyone. That's how we keep the site secure, okay? You also agree to abide with applicable laws, agree not to harm the website or provide unauthorized access. The only folks that should be users within your court's account are employees, staff, or, subcontractors that are working in your court. You're not going to share it with your friend, provide an invitation to your friend who works in a court in a different state and say, hey, you should try out this RANT tool. And that would be in violation of the agreement. You're also agreeing not to copy any part of it. Just so you're aware, everything you see on screen is TRI PHMC intellectual property. So the items themselves, how the screens appear, how the reports appear, and of course, our scoring algorithms are trade secret. We do not provide that with anyone, okay? So the very first time they are going to appear, you are going to click an I accept button when they appear on the screen, and then you'll never see them again. However, for your convenience, we do provide them right here on the screen for you. To the right of that is a RANT items link. And when you click on that, this is a paper and pencil version of the tool. We certainly recognize there may be times where you as a staff member, are going to meet the client and interview them in a place where you don't have access to a computer with internet access, such as a jail. It's also helpful to have paper and pencil versions as backup. So one of the things I suggest that you do, and of course, given some recent circumstances, this is all even more important, but is to, after this training, if you don't already have paper and pencil versions of the RANT or DUI RANT at your desk, log in, click on that link, print them out, and keep a couple at your desk. First of all, it's helpful if you made an appointment with a client and you can't interview them directly in the software. You can grab that paper and pencil form off your desk and run out the door. But it's critically important in the event that you're in the middle of an interview and let's say the internet goes down because of a thunderstorm, okay? And you're halfway through the interview, rather than having to reschedule with the client, you just grab that paper and pencil form, okay? And finish the interview. And then when the internet comes back up and you can log in, all you have to do is finish the data entry from the last item you were on, okay? So that's why we provide you with a paper and pencil form. It's got everything from the client information screen, the demographics, and everything you need to administer the tool properly, including the more info, which includes the intent of the item and the coding rules. So that's available to you. To the right of the RANT items is a user manual, and this is a very comprehensive user manual. It is 46 pages long. So to save a tree, I suggest that you only use it online, but of course, if you prefer a paper and pencil copy, you can certainly print this out by just clicking on this print icon over here to the right. The best way to use this manual is to scroll to page 2. Page 2 has a table of contents. Now, the first 10 pages of the manual really kind of consist of some of the background about the development. So includes some of the content I discussed in the PowerPoint presentation. But then the rest of the manual really gets into step-by-step the technical functioning of the software, okay? How to change your password, some account manager capabilities. If you're the account manager and you want to go over that, that's there. I want to point out for you, like this one, what if I have a question or problem? It says go to page 44. So all you have to do is come over here. You can see there's a scroll bar, and I'm going to scroll down to page 44. And on this page, it lists our toll-free RANT support helpline, which is 866-453-9262, or our RANT support email address. Now, while we were at TRI, the email address was rantsupport@tresearch.org. If you email us there, it will come to us. You can also, of course, email us at a shorter email address, which is rantsupport@phmc.org. Our hours, again, of operation are 8:30 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. Now, if you call the helpline, please leave us a voicemail message. We will get back to you as soon as possible, okay? We generally suggest, especially since there's a little bit of a time zone difference between you all and us here on the East Coast, is send us an email, okay? Even if it's after hours, a lot of times we are online and available. We'll see that email and we'll get back to you, okay? So that is your user manual. To the right of that is a RANT FAQ. FAQ stands for frequently asked questions. So let's talk about some of these things. We've already talked about item 1. After I register and log in, how do I get started? So it suggests you download the user manual. Okay. Item number 2, what if I don't have access to the internet or computer when I'm interviewing clients? Again, we've already discussed this. It suggests you download a paper and pencil copy of the RANT located in the RANT items link in the top right-hand corner. Okay. Item number 3 says, why can't I see all the RANTs completed by users within my drug court? Okay, so the version of RANT that you all have is the streamlined RANT, and users can only see the RANTs that they have personally completed. Okay, so, just so you're aware, that's the only RANTs you'll be able to see. Now, item number 4, if there's one thing that you remember from this training, I hope it is this. And I will repeat this issue multiple times. Okay. The RANTs that are in your database, you only have access to them for 30 days. After that, you will no longer be able to access them. So it's very important that after you complete your RANT and you complete your report, you print out a hard copy or save an electronic copy of it outside of the system. And of course, I'm going to show you how to do that, because after 30 days, if you go to search for that client, you will not be able to find them. Okay. Item number 5 says, how do I edit or change an answer on a previously completed and scored RANT? I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit later in the training. And finally, on the frequently asked questions, we list there our email support email address and our toll-free telephone number again for you. Now, of course, it's important for you to write those things down and kind of keep them outside of the system in the event that you're having technical difficulties, perhaps logging in, and you want to know how to contact us. If you can't log in, you can't see that. So it might be helpful for you to write that down, keep it on a sticky near your desk. All righty. And then we are back here at the main menu. Now, what just happened is that the software you might see the screen went all white. That was on purpose. Sometimes you will also get an error message. This is actually a HIPAA feature that we have built into the software. It's going to force me to log back in. The reason being that I wasn't active in the site. The site thought, because I wasn't really typing anything in, all I was doing is clicking, it actually thinks that I went inactive. It was over 10 minutes long that I didn't type anything in. So it actually shut down on me. And that's a feature, a security feature. You're in the middle of doing a RANT, you step away from your desk and someone walks up and wants to maybe do a search and see what someone's risk need score is. If it's been after 10 minutes, they won't be able to do that. What will happen is what you just saw there. The screen will go white or you will get an error message. All righty, so we are now here at the main menu, okay? And there's 3 buttons on the main menu. You can start a new interview, you can complete a previous interview, or you can search recent interviews. Again, these bottom 2 buttons are only going to have data or only going to list clients if it's within 30 days. So you can complete a previous interview as long as it's within 30 days once you started it. That's where to complete an interview started, you're going to click the middle button. And to see completed interviews, you'd click the bottom button. Now let's start a new interview and let's get into this tool. So when you do that, the very first screen that pops open is a client information screen. Any of the fields with a red asterisk are required fields. You must fill these out. Now, client ID, this is whatever you decide to enter in, within your court, okay? So, but you do need to put something in there, all right? So you can put in up to 15 characters, both letters and numbers. Put in a client's last name, a client's first name. Middle name is not a required field, nor is suffix. So if the client has a suffix such as junior, senior, third, or fourth, you want to click on the drop-down arrow and select that from the drop-down. DOB is date of birth, where you're going to want to enter in a 2-digit month, a 2-digit day, and a 4-digit year. Gender, you're going to select either male, female, or unknown. And with gender, race, and ethnicity, you can only select one of the options available. So what I always suggest with these items is list the response options for the client and ask them to select the one they most closely associate with. You do not want to just select gender, race, and ethnicity yourself without asking the client which one they most closely associate with. Now, if a client is multiracial, you can ask them to select the one they most closely associate with and select just the one race. Or if they consider themselves multiracial, you can select other. You'll note that the next item is ethnicity, where your response options are Hispanic or Latino, not Hispanic or Latino, or unknown. So we pulled ethnicity out of race, okay? And it's how we did that because that's how the US Census collects data. And then finally, we're going to enter in the date interview began. Now, lots of folks ask me during training, Megan, why does that automatically default to today's date? The reason being, in the event you interviewed a client, okay, using a paper and pencil form, and then a day or two later, you're data entering it, we want you to actually enter in the date when you interviewed the client. So thus the date interview began, okay? So that's why there's a difference between today's date and the date interview began. But we are going to pretend we're entering in a live interview. So we put in today's date and we come here to the bottom right of the screen and you can see there's two buttons. There's a cancel button and a begin interview. So we're going to click begin interview. And now it takes us into the tool itself. So let me orient you to this screen. Directly underneath the RANT logo is what we call our item roadmap. It tells you which of the 19 items you're on, or in the case of a DUI RANT, which of the 23 items you're on, okay? It's really helpful in the event that you're in the middle of an interview and the client says, hey, my ride's going to be here in 10 minutes. Are we almost done with this? And, you can look there right there on your item roadmap and say, oh, we only have 2 more items to go. Yeah, we're going to be done in time. All right. Directly below that, it lists the client's name and the interview date. Now, the RANT item itself is going to be in black bold font here in the middle of the screen. To the right, it's going to be the response field, okay, where it's going to be either an empty box where you're going to enter in an age or a number. There are multiple items where the response is yes or no, where you're going to click in the circle next to yes or no to indicate the client's response. And then there's one item that is multiple choice. Above every RANT and DUI RANT item is this blue more info link that when you click on it, a blue box pops open. What's included in that blue box is the intent of the item, why that item is included in the RANT. Now, since our scientists are experts at developing tools, they know that it is critical for an interviewer to understand the intent of the item for them to administer the tool properly. In the event that you need to rephrase the item for the client because they misunderstood, or you need to ask additional questions, additional probes to follow up, okay? In addition, understanding the intent of the item also helps you to code the client's response accurately. Now, the content you see here in the blue more info box is silent information for the interviewer only. You're not going to read that to the client, okay? So that's really just there for you. And it's totally up to you whether you open that box or not. That content doesn't change over time. So once you familiarize yourself with it, you're less likely to open it up. Now, for purposes of time during the training, I'm not going to read you the content of the more info. That's another reason why it's really helpful after a training to print out a hard copy of the tool, because the more info content is on that paper and pencil version. And I find that it's helpful for new interviewers to grab that paper form and read over and familiarize themselves with the more info. No, the vast majority of the RANT items are going to have a box below the RANT item itself. We call that the coding rule or hint box. Okay, so you're going to see that appear when we move to item number 2. Now, before we move on, I want to point out the navigation buttons. In the bottom right-hand corner, there are next and previous buttons. Now, the next button is the only one that's lit up. The previous button is grayed out. But once we move to item number 2, that previous button will appear. And on all the screens in the bottom left corner, there is an exit interview button. Okay, so if you need to exit an interview prematurely, you would click on that. Now let's talk about this item itself. The very first item is current age, and actually the response box is already filled in with a 36 because the software automatically calculates the client's age, okay, based upon the date of birth item on the client information screen. That screen we just completed. And as you can see in the more info, the reason why this item is included in the RANT is a younger age during rehabilitation or treatment generally predicts a poor response to interventions. So let's move to item number 2. Item number 2 is homeless during the past 12 months. If I click on the more info, the intent of this item is to determine whether there's been a pattern of instability in the individual's living arrangements during the previous year. Okay, and your response options are yes, no. Now, here's that coding rule hint box I just mentioned. All right, so you're going to see the majority of the items will have that. Now, any of the items in the RANT or the DUI RANT that ask about the past 12 months are going to have this coding rule appear at the top of the coding rule box. It says, if incarcerated, the question pertains to the 12 months prior to incarceration. In other words, if you're interviewing a client while they're in jail or prison, you're going to ask them to respond based upon the 12 months prior to their entry in that jail or prison. Okay, so we're asking them to respond about before they were incarcerated. Now, for purposes of the RANT, we're going to code yes if a client was homeless at any point during the past 12 months because it's a pattern of instability in their living arrangements. And we count as homeless whether the client was literally living on the streets, living in a shelter, or if the individual tended not to have a steady address and moved around between friends, family members, and or shelters. In other words, couch surfed, where they didn't have a permanent home of their own. They're not renting a home. They don't pay a mortgage on a home. They're not permanently staying with a family member or friend that is renting or owns a home. But instead, they're crashing on the couch or in the guest room of a friend or family member for several days or weeks or months, and then they're moving on to potentially to somebody else's place to crash at their place. So again, we count as homeless any point in the past 12 months the client has lived on the streets, lived in a shelter, or couch surfed, where they tended not to have a steady address and moved around between friends, family members, shelters. If any of that happened the past 12 months, you code it as yes. Otherwise, you code it as no. And you come down here and click the next button. Item number 3 is number of address changes during the past 12 months. And the purpose of this item is the same as the previous item, is to determine whether there's been a pattern of instability in the individual's living arrangements during the previous year. And you're going to put a number in the response box. Okay, now notice the wording of this item is not number of addresses, it is number of address changes. Okay, in other words, how many times a client has moved during the past 12 months. Okay, however, if they moved for the following reasons listed here in the coding rule box, we are not going to count it. So you're not going to include address changes resulting from incarceration, residential placement, hospitalization, job relocation, or military service. Okay, that's a reason why they moved. You would not count that here. Okay. And essentially for every month a client was homeless, we're going to count that as one address change. So if the individual is homeless during all the past 12 months, you're going to enter in a 12. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm interviewing Tracy Thompson, and Tracy says, well, I was homeless for 6 months. So we know at a minimum, it's going to be a 6 that we enter in here. Then we're going to ask her, because for every month someone is homeless, you count that as one address change. She said she was homeless for 6 months. And then we're going to ask her for the 6 months where she wasn't homeless, did she have any address changes? But also make sure the address change was not for these reasons, because if so, you would not count it. So let me give you another example. Let's say I'm interviewing Tracy, and Tracy says, well, I've lived in 3 addresses in the past year. If I typed in a 3, that would be wrong. And let me tell you why. Because when she moved from address 1 to address 2, that was her first address change. When she moved from address 2 to address 3, it was her second address change. So although she had 3 addresses, It's only 2 address changes. So that's how we code that item. Item number 4 asks number of months in the past 12 months engaged in regular legal employment for 20 more hours per week. But the more info for this item is very important because the purpose of this item is to assess regular engagement in pro-social productive activity. So not only are we counting regular legal employment for 20 or more hours per week here, we're also going to include as legitimate employment any time engaged as a full-time student, in vocational training, in a sheltered workshop, as a homemaker, or in military service, okay? Any of those things we are counting because guess why? Because it's pro-social productive activity, okay? We're also going to count serving as a caregiver or volunteering for 20 more hours per week as regular legal employment because again, those activities are pro-social productive activities. Now, notice the first coding rule here. It says, if client is retired or disabled, click not applicable. So this is one of a few items in the RANT and the DUI RANT that has this not applicable checkbox. The reason we have that is if you have someone who's retired or disabled, so that's why they're not working or they're not involved in any pro-social productive activity, we don't want to hold it against them, okay? Because they're not doing those things because they're retired or disabled. If that's the case, you'd click not applicable, okay? A couple other things I want to clarify here. It says, do not include under the table or legal work which is not pro-social. So a lot of our clients work under the table. They're paid off the books, which you can argue is illegal. However, if they're involved in pro-social productive activity as, under the table work that they are doing to support themselves and their families, we do want to count that here, okay? So let's say that they, essentially run an unlicensed daycare out of their home. They babysit for several relatives and several neighbors' kids. And that's how they support themselves and their family. They're paid off the books, okay? But it is pro-social productive activity. We would count that. Or let's say that they work on a landscape crew and they're paid off the books. And that's how they support themselves and their family. We're going to count that here, even though you could argue it's not legal employment. Or they mow lawns off the books, or they deliver pizzas off the books. We would count that here. What we're not going to count is under the table or legal work, which is not pro-social. So they're supporting themselves by being involved in illegal work or non-pro-social things like selling drugs, boosting stolen goods, prostituting, pimping. That's how they're supporting themselves, and they consider that their employment. We would not count that here because it's not pro-social productive activity, okay? We're also not going to include temporary shift work that's not regular, okay? Because we're looking at 20 or more hours per week, and we want to know the number of months in the past 12 months that they have done that, okay? So that's what we're looking for here. Let's say that Tracy is employed 20 more hours per week full-time and has been for the past 12 months. We're going to put in a 12 and we hit the next button. The next item is age of onset of criminal activity. Now, notice the wording of this item. This item does not say age of first arrest, okay? This item refers to the age in which the individual was first arrested or first engaged in activity that would have resulted in an arrest or delinquency adjudication if it had been detected by authorities, okay? We're also not going to include minor summary offenses such as truancy or graffiti here. So you're going to, rely on this coding rule box again to assist you. Now, I want to take a minute and stop and talk about administration of the tool, because hopefully I've made it very clear that this tool, as well as the DUI RANT, is interviewer administered. In other words, you, the staff member, are going to be sitting behind the computer or laptop. The client's going to be sitting across from you or next to you, okay? Or if you're administering a paper and pencil form, they're sitting across from you. You have the paper form in front of you. They're sitting across or next to you. You are going to log into the computer. You are going to ask the questions. The client is going to verbally give an answer. You'll probe as necessary, and you will type an answer in, okay? Same thing with the paper and pencil form. you are going to write down the client's answers. At no point would you log in, hand the laptop to the client and say, fill this out on your own and let me know when you're done. Nor would you ever hand them a paper form and say, here, can you fill this out and let me know when you're done? And then you, the staff member, just data enter and score it, okay? That would be self-administration, okay, where the client fills it out on their own. The tool was not designed for that. It has not been validated for that. You are not going to get accurate information. So I just want to make sure I'm making it very clear to please never administer the tool like that, okay? Now, also, in addition, you are asking the client questions, they're verbally giving an answers, and that's called self-report, okay? But many of the items of both the RANT and the DUI RANT can be verified, okay, if you have access to collateral information, such as the criminal justice records, okay? And this is one of the items that's on the RANT that you could verify the accuracy of their information. And let me show you how you would do that. So you're going to ask them, you know, how old the client was when they were first arrested or first engaged in activity that would have resulted in arrest or delinquency adjudication if it had been detected by authorities. Okay, so let's say I'm interviewing Tracy, and Tracy says, well, you know, I didn't get involved in criminal activity until I was 18. But you check her criminal justice records and you see that she was arrested and convicted at age 16. She told you 18, but you know for a fact it was actually age 16. So you would type in a 16 here. That's how you would use collateral information to help verify the accuracy of the information. Now, let me give you another example. Let's say you're interviewing another client. The client says, you know, I got involved in criminal activity at age 12, okay? And you check their criminal justice records and you see they weren't arrested and convicted until age 21, okay? So you're not going to change the 12 to 21. The client got involved, admitted to you, they got involved in criminal activity at age 12. They just didn't get caught until they were age 21, okay? And you want to know how old they were when they got involved in criminal activity, okay? So it's not age of first arrest, it's age of onset of criminal activity that we're recording here, okay? So we put in a 12 and we move to the next item. The next item is number of prior diversion programs or de novo referrals. Okay, and these items are for criminal disposition in lieu of a criminal trial or prosecution, such as drug court, DUI court, accelerated rehabilitation disposition. I saw someone raised a hand, and we're just asking you to please just put your question in the comment, and then Anna will record that and we'll get back to you after the training because we have a lot of content to cover. And generally, I cover that information later in the training. Okay, so again, we're looking at how many times a client has been in a diversion program. You can give the definition right there for them. Now, if you don't use the term de novo in your jurisdiction, you can leave that off of there, okay? In some areas of the country, they call diversion programs de novo referrals, okay? But if that's going to mean nothing to your client, you don't need to do that. But you do want to list some examples of what you mean by a diversion program, things like drug court, DUI court. In Pennsylvania, we have something called accelerated rehabilitation disposition. If you call your diversion program something else, you can certainly list that. But you want to provide them with the definition that appears right here, provide them with the examples. Also let them know in these programs, the disposition is often conditional on the defendants participating in treatment and performing certain tasks. Now, other coding rules that apply here, it says include prior diversions or de novo, regardless of whether or not the individual satisfied the conditions. So if a client was in a diversion program previously and they successfully graduated, fantastic. You're still going to count it here, okay? If unfortunately they were in a diversion program and you know, they were removed from the program for, you know, violations, etc., you know, and they were discharged, that's unfortunate. You're still going to count that the fact that they were in a diversion program previously. However, you're not going to include similar programs attended as a juvenile. Okay, so it's important for you to confirm with the client that these are diversion programs that they were in as an adult. Now, if you have access to their criminal justice records, you may be able to verify the accuracy, okay, and update the information as needed. But let's say Tracy's never been in a diversion program previously. We hit 0 and we hit the next item. Item number 7 is the number of prior deferred prosecutions. Okay. In some jurisdictions, this is also called probation before judgment. Okay. If you do not in your jurisdiction have deferred prosecutions or probation before judgment, okay, then you can just enter in a 0. Now, one of the things that's most important is for item number 6, if you count a diversion program here, do not also count it as a deferred prosecution here. It's very important that you not double count things. Okay, so just so you are aware with this item. Item number 7 is a very straightforward item. It just asks the number of bench warrants for failure to appear in the past 3 years. However, you're not going to include warrants issued for lesser infractions, such as a failure to pay fines. A lot of times folks don't pay parking tickets, and they end up getting a bench warrant, okay? And it's for a failure to pay fine. If that's not a failure to appear, we're only counting failure to appear, only warrants issued for failure to appear, and only in the past 3 years. If I'm interviewing Tracy and Tracy said, oh, I had a bunch of them, and I say, well, when were they? And she says, oh, they were like 5 years ago. Then I would probe and say, how about in the past 3 years? Have you had any bench warrants specifically for failure to appear in the past 3 years? And she says, no. We put in a 0 and we hit the next item. Item number 9 asks number of prior felony convictions. Okay, what I want to point out here is we are counting felonies, okay, and we are counting convictions only. Notice the wording of this item is not number of prior felony arrests. It's not number of prior felony charges. We are looking to record convictions and felony convictions only. Coding rule box is very straightforward, okay? You're excluding all juvenile convictions except for those in which they are charged as an adult. Now, we're only counting the instance of the conviction. A lot of times our clients are convicted on multiple counts. Okay, we're only counting the instance of the conviction here. And this client has not had any felony convictions, and we hit the next item. Item number 10 asks the number of prior serious misdemeanor convictions. Just like the previous item, okay, we're only counting convictions. We're only counting serious misdemeanor convictions, and we provided you examples that we want you to list. Tracy, this is what I mean by serious misdemeanor convictions. Have you been convicted of misdemeanor assault, domestic assault, interference with privacy, harassment, restraining order violation, order protection violation, DUI, indecent exposure? Now, if in your jurisdictions you use different terminology, for example, let's say you call domestic assault domestic violence, or you call, DWI DUI, then you want to list and use the terminology that is parallel to what's listed here as the example, so that your client is going to recognize that type of charge and will bring it up and say, oh yeah, I was convicted of that. Okay. However, you're not going to include resisting arrest or disorderly conduct. And just like the previous item, you're excluding all juvenile convictions except for those in which they were charged as an adult. So only counting convictions, only counting the instance of the conviction, not all the counts, and only counting serious misdemeanors such as these examples. Okay. This client has had 1 serious misdemeanor conviction. And item number 11 asks number of other misdemeanor convictions. And it says very straightforward here. This item refers to misdemeanor convictions not reported in the previous item. So make sure something you count in item number 10, you also don't accidentally double count in item number 11. But there's a couple important coding rules that are listed right there on the screen for you. You're not going to include summary offenses or minor traffic citations for such things as speeding, illegal U-turns, or illegal parking. However, you are going to include more serious misdemeanor traffic offenses, such as reckless driving and driving with a suspended license. Now, item number 10, we told you to exclude resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. That's because you're going to count it here under item number 11. And just like the previous 2 items, you're excluding all juvenile convictions except for those in which you were charged as an adult. And just like the previous items, you're counting convictions only, and you're counting misdemeanors that are not counted under item number 10. This client has had 2 other misdemeanor convictions. We enter that and hit the next button. Item number 12 looks at age of onset of regular substance use, okay? Now, this refers to the age in which the individual began using alcohol, illicit drugs, or prescription drugs on a repetitive basis, at least weekly or monthly, and prescription drugs used in a non-prescribed manner, okay? So we're not including experimentation or infrequent usage less often than monthly. Most of our clients, when they first start using, they're using experimentally. Maybe they drink alcohol for the first time at a family wedding. And then a couple months later, they go to their first high school party. And a couple months later, they're hanging out with friends and they smoke marijuana for the first time. All of those examples are experimental usage. We want to know how old the client was when they began using regularly. And our definition is at least weekly or monthly. And we're looking for alcohol, illicit drugs, or prescription drugs used in a non-prescribed manner. Now, notice that next to the response box, there's another not applicable checkbox. And the reason that's there is the very first version of RANT, we did not have a not applicable checkbox. And we got a call on the helpline and someone said, hey, Megan, what do I do? I had an interview. I just conducted an interview and the client told me her drug of choice is alcohol. And the only time she drinks is a couple times a year during special occasions like weddings and holidays. And so she says, like, her entire life, she only usually drinks like 4 or 5 times a year. And so I said, are you drinking monthly? Are you drinking weekly? And she says, no, I'm literally drinking a couple times a year. And that's how I've always drank. Then she doesn't meet criteria for regular substance use as we define it in RANT, because it's not at weekly or monthly. So if that happens to you, you'd use the not applicable checkbox. So we had to add that in. So those are the type of questions, that you would call the helpline and say, I had this unusual circumstance, Megan, I'm not sure how to code it. You let us, and we'll get back to you. And sometimes we actually have to go to the scientists and say, how would you code this unique circumstance? Okay. But, since the RANT's been around since 2008, hopefully we worked out most of those unusual circumstances already for you and put that in the coding rules. Okay. So this client first started using regular at age 16 and we hit the next button. Item number 13 asks number of prior substance abuse treatment episodes or attempts. I'm going to take a quick water break before we go into this. So a lot of times our clients, when they have a treatment episode or attempt, they actually move and cycle through different modalities of care. And we would count all those different modalities of care, okay? Whether it's detox, residential drug and alcohol treatment, whether it's intensive outpatient, whether it's inpatient, whether it's traditional outpatient, okay? We would count them. And we're going to count a treatment episode or attempt regardless of what happened. Okay, if the individual completed treatment, fantastic. We're counting that as a treatment episode or attempt. If they unfortunately dropped out prematurely, if they were discharged for violations or non-compliance, if they left AMA, all of that is unfortunate, but we're counting that because it's a treatment attempt, okay? What we're not going to count is participation in self-help or peer support interventions, such as 12-step or AA groups. Now, that's not to say that those are not beneficial, okay? That's not a statement that we're saying here. But, we bring that up because for purposes of the RANT, we decided not to count that as a treatment episode or attempt if that's all they did. A lot of times clients go to IOP or traditional outpatient, and part of that program, they're required to attend 12-step, AA, NA, CA, something like that. And if they did that, what you're counting there is the IOP or the traditional outpatient. But if all they did, let's say I'm interviewing Tracy, and Tracy says, well, for about 6 months, I went with my neighbor to AA, a couple times a week, and that was really helpful to me, okay? You would probe and say, is that all you did? And if Tracy says, yep, I just went for 6 months with her, we would not count that here. Again, that's not saying that's not beneficial. Certainly, there's plenty of research that shows that self-help and 12-step can be very beneficial, but for purposes of the RANT, we're not counting that as treatment. In addition, we're not going to count treatment referrals resulting from or occurring after the current arrest episode. A lot of our clients, after they get arrested, a family member, a friend, their attorney says, hey, you might want to get enrolled in treatment. The judge might look more favorably upon you if you do so. And so they get arrested and then they go to treatment. Okay. If that is what happened after the current arrest episode, you're not going to count that treatment referral as one of their treatment episodes or attempts. However, if the client was actively enrolled in treatment at the time of the current arrest, okay, you would count that. So if they were actively enrolled and going, you would count that here. We also are going to count medication-assisted treatment. More and more clients are getting involved in MAT. They're getting scripts for Suboxone, buprenorphine, naltrexone. You know, they might be in a methadone maintenance program. We will count that as a treatment episode or attempt as long as the prescription was prescribed. If the medication was prescribed for them by a physician, by a legitimate physician, and it was prescribed for them. Okay. So if a client gets some street methadone to help them come off opiates, we're not going to count that. Okay. Because they got it off the street. Or if their friend gave them some of their Suboxone, we're not going to count that because it was prescribed for their friend. Okay. It has to be prescribed by a legitimate physician for the client to count as a treatment episode or attempt. And finally, we're not going to include treatment attended as a juvenile, only as an adult. Now, this item can be tricky because of clients moving through different modalities of care. So let me give you a couple examples to help you to code this properly. Let's say I'm interviewing Tracy and Tracy says, well, in 2010, I was having some problems and I went to a detox facility and went there for 5 days. And then my family hooked me up with a residential facility. I had to fly there. It was this famous place. I went there, successfully completed 28 days. Okay. And then they referred me to and hooked me up with an aftercare program. It was an intensive outpatient program near my home. So I flew home, you know, I went to that IOP for about 3 months. And then I eventually stepped down to their traditional outpatient program. So in that example, Tracy Thompson, and that's the only treatment she's had. Okay. In that example, Tracy Thompson had 4 different modalities. Okay. Detox, residential, IOP, traditional outpatient at 3 different facilities, the detox facility, the residential, and then the IOP and traditional outpatient one place. But it would count as one treatment episode or attempt because it was all continuous. Client went to detox, then from there transferred to residential, then from there hooked up with the IOP and eventually stepped down traditional outpatient. So that's one example. Let me give you another example. Let's say I'm interviewing another client and the client says, well, in 2015, I went to a detox facility, but I left AMA after 3 days. And a year later, I was still having problems. So my family got me into this residential facility. I flew out there. I completed that program successfully. It was a 28-day program, came home, but I never hooked up with the aftercare program they suggested. Okay. And 2 years later, I relapsed and I ended up going to that IOP program that's near my house that residential program had suggested. And then a couple of years later, I was having problems again. I went back to that same program, but I was working at the time, so I didn't have time to go to IOP. So I just went to their traditional outpatient program. In that second example, the same modalities as Trace's example, the same facilities. However, there was a large period of time between going to each of the facilities, okay, and the different modalities. So in that second example, we count that as 4 treatment episodes or attempts. Essentially, we say that if the client is required to have, you know, a whole brand new assessment and enrollment and it's generally because there's been a large break in period of time going from one facility to the next, then you would count them all as separate treatment episodes or attempts. And again, if you ever have a question about how to count something, gather the information from the client, give us a call on the helpline, and we'll help you to sort that out. Item number 14 asks about withdrawal syndrome in the past 12 months. And notice the coding rule box for this is longer, and it requires you to use this scroll bar here. So we provide everything you need to code this item properly right here in the coding rule box. So first, let me tell you the wrong way to administer the item. The wrong way would be for me to say to Tracy, hey, Tracy, in the past 12 months, have you gone through withdrawal, and not say anything else? Because a lot of clients, they have a definition in their head what they think withdrawal is. And a lot of times they think it means having the shakes. Okay. And if you don't provide for them the exact symptoms that you're looking for to meet the criteria, they're going to, just have in their head what they think it is. And if they think it just means having the shakes, they might say, yeah, I had that in the past 12 months, and you'd code it yes, and you would have administered the item improperly. The proper way to administer this item is to first give them the definition. It's right there on the screen. Withdrawal syndrome occurs when individuals stop or significantly reduce their drug or alcohol use. Then you're going to want to find out what the client's drug or drug of choice is, because listed here in the box directly from the APA DSM-5 manual, it lists by drug category what withdrawal symptoms would be. Okay, so if the client's drug of choice is alcohol, sedatives, anxiolytics, they have to have had 2 or more of the following symptoms when they stop using or significantly reduce their use. Okay, if that happened in the past 12 months, you'd code it as yes. Or with stimulants such as cocaine and amphetamines, their symptomatology is dysphoric mood and 2 or more of the following symptoms. And you're going to want to list those symptoms and say, hey, did this happen to you in the past 12 months? If their drug of choice is opioids, such as heroin, morphine, codeine, oxycodone, they have to have 3 or more of the following symptoms. And then finally, with the DSM-5, there's now a cannabis withdrawal syndrome where they have to have 3 or more of the following symptoms. Please note that there is not a serious withdrawal syndrome been identified for hallucinogens, so you are aware. So that is their drug of choice. That is the only drug of choice. They're not going to have a withdrawal syndrome. So again, you're going to provide the definition, find out what their drug of choice are, and list examples. By the way, we try to include more layman's terms. So if you're not sure what autonomic hyperactivity is, we provide that example for you. It's sweating or a pulse rate of greater than 100 beats per minute. Okay. But if you're not sure what dysphoric mood is, you can just Google it. If you're not sure what anxiolytics are, you can Google it. Okay. So that's what I usually suggest to people if they're not sure. But again, if you're not sure what lacrimation or rhinorrhea is, it's continuously having a runny eyes or nose. Okay. So let's say I'm interviewing Tracy and I say, Tracy, want to know if you've had withdrawal syndrome in the past 12 months. Okay. And withdrawal syndrome occurs when individuals stop or significantly reduce their drug or alcohol use. Okay. So I know we've talked about that your drug of choice is alcohol, correct? I want to know if in the past 12 months, when you've stopped your alcohol use or significantly reduced your alcohol use, if you've had 2 or more of the following symptoms. And I would read these symptoms right off the screen and I would say, Tracy, has that happened to you in the past 12 months? And she either says yes or no. Okay. So just rely right there on the screen. The next item is binge use and loss of control in the past 12 months. Okay. And I want to point out for you, we're not just asking if they binged in the past 12 months. Again, that would be the wrong way to administer it. And a lot of our clients know what we mean by binging. Okay. But we're looking for binge use and loss of control. Okay. So we're looking for any use of a substance that triggers an uncontrollable pattern of sustained usage with an inability to stop oneself. And we provide an example for you, such as drinking 1 beer that led to an uncontrollable all-nighter or several day bender. Tracy, has that happened to you in the past 12 months? Yes or no? Okay, so that's what we're looking at. We're not just looking for a binge where a client used a large amount of a substance during a short period of time. We're looking for a binge use and loss of control. That loss of control has to be there. Okay, yes or no? Item number 16 asks about cravings or compulsions in the past 12 months. So while item number 15 is an and item where you have to have binge use and loss of control, this item, the client can report cravings or compulsions. And we provide a definition of what we mean. So what I mean, Tracy, by cravings are intense urges to use a substance that are extremely difficult to withstand. Okay, that's what I mean by cravings. And compulsion is where you have a severe preoccupation or obsession with obtaining a substance, where you have tunnel vision, where all you can focus on or think about is getting your hands on that substance. Have you had cravings or compulsions in the past 12 months? Yes or no? And she will respond, and you hit the next button. Item number 17, asks chronic substance abuse related medical condition. Okay, and we're looking for a medical condition that is either caused by or could be severely exacerbated by their substance use. Okay, we're only including medical disorders that are directly caused or severely exacerbated by substance use. All right, and you're going to list examples for you. They appear right there on the screen. What I mean by that, Tracy, are things like pancreatitis, cirrhosis of the liver, HIV, hepatitis, heart or kidney damage. Now, if you're not sure, your client's not sure what a chronic medical condition is, we provide a definition for you. Okay, because a chronic medical condition requires you to take medication or receive other treatment on a daily or weekly basis for at least several months or years. And they normally have to have bodily function monitored through regular periodic testing. In other words, lab work. Okay. So we're looking to see if they have a chronic medical condition, this long-term medical condition, okay, that is either directly caused by or severely exacerbated. Now, let's say I'm interviewing Tracy, and she says, well, I was in a car accident. I was intoxicated. I was driving, got in a car accident, and I severely injured my back. Doctor says, I'm going to have multiple back surgeries. I'm going to have physical therapy for probably a couple years. In that case, you would count that. Traumatic injuries caused by intoxication may be included here, but only if they require ongoing medical monitoring intervention. So Tracy is going to have several back surgeries and have physical therapy for very many years. And her traumatic injury was caused by her intoxication. So it was substance abuse related. So we would code that as a yes. Let's say you're interviewing a different client and the client says, well, I was intoxicated. I got in a car accident, but I broke my collarbone. And the doctor says for about 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to have to be in a sling, but that's it. And then I'll be fine. Okay. You would not count that here because that's not a chronic, long-term, ongoing medical condition. That's actually an acute injury. Okay. It was directly caused by their drug and alcohol use because they were intoxicated and got in the car accident, but it only caused a brief injury. So in that case, we would not count that here. That would be a no. Now, let me give you another example. Let's say I'm interviewing another client. The client says, oh yeah, I have a chronic medical condition. I have asthma. Okay. Yep. Asthma. There's no cure for asthma, a long-term condition. I've had that since I was a kid. And the client says, whenever I've been smoking, pot so much that it's been, really causing problems with my asthma. It's been exacerbating it. And I have to use my rescue inhaler all the time now. In that example, we would code that as yes, because it is a chronic medical condition exacerbated by their substance use. Okay, hit the next button and we go to item number 18. Item 18 asks the amount of time during the past 12 months spent interacting with other people who are engaged in criminal activity, including illicit drug use. Is it none, a little, some, most, or almost all? Okay, so you're going to want to list those response options here for them. Okay. Now, one of the coding rules that we see miscoded a lot is that clients think you're asking about their current situation. And a lot of times, you're interviewing them, they've been arrested. And after the current arrest episode, they clean up their act and they tell you, you know what, I'm not hanging out with those people anymore. They were a bad influence. So I would say that's none. Okay. You would want to probe and follow up and just, emphasize for them, what we're talking about here, Tracy, is, the amount of time during the entire past 12 months, over the entire past 12 months, if you look, how much time did you spend interacting with them? And he says, well, she says, really, these are my best friends. I spent most or almost all of my time with them until, I got in trouble. And so then you would say, well, if you had to choose one, Tracy, would it be most or almost all? And she says it's almost all. And you code that here. Now, what's included in the more info is a reminder that the client's influence, particularly pronounced for immediate family members, significant others, and housemates, because of their proximity of their either they live together or the seriousness of their relationship. Okay. So if at some point during the interview, the client has shared with you, my significant other is, also using drugs, or, the reason I got in trouble is because, all my housemates are using, then, because they're actually in their household or based upon the seriousness of the relationship, you're going to expect that to be most or almost all. So just something to keep in mind when you're asking the question and you're probing is to make sure that the client's information makes sense based upon their story. And this item 19 of 19 is major axis 1 mental health diagnosis. And with the update to the DSM-5, there's no longer major axis 1 diagnoses. But essentially, we want to know if they have a serious psychiatric disorder, such as major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, manic depression, psychosis, dementia, organic brain syndrome. And what's important here is they have to meet criteria for a diagnosis. Now, we're not asking you to complete a skid with them and, and see if they meet all the criteria, or whip out the DSM-5 manual and go through and see if they meet criteria. You're not diagnosing them. You're going to ask them if they have, had a formal diagnosis from a mental health professional, or if they've been prescribed psychiatric medication. If so, what was it for? So if the client says, oh, I always thought that I had bipolar, okay? And you would say, well, did you see a mental health professional? Did you see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, another doctor? Were you given a diagnosis? If so, what was it for? Did they prescribe you medication? And the client says, no, I just looked it up on WebMD and I have all those symptoms. I definitely think I have bipolar. And you confirm they were not given that diagnosis by anyone, did not receive treatment for that, then the answer is going to be a no. Or a client says, my mom always thought I had major depressive disorder. So you're going to probe and follow up. Did you see a doctor or a mental health professional for that? Were you given a formal diagnosis? Were you prescribed medication? Okay, what was it for? That is what you're going to be coding here. There's a couple coding rules I just want to point out. We're not going to include mild or temporary emotional disturbances here, such as nervousness, anxiety, worry, dysthymia, depression, sadness, mild problems with concentration or memory, personality disorders. So if the client says to you, I'm really nervous today, I hate doing these type of interviews, is that what you mean by a serious psychiatric disorder diagnosis? Does that count that I'm really nervous? The answer would be no. Okay. So, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about more serious mental health diagnoses that they have been diagnosed for. Now, notice the next button in the bottom right-hand corner has been changed to a review answers button. When we click on that, okay, it's going to take you to a screen that lists all 19 items, the response that you typed in, and then next to every item, there is an edit link. So this is the perfect opportunity. Remember, we talk about verifying the accuracy of the client's information using collateral information, such as the client's criminal justice records. This is the screen you want to do it on. Okay. Now, first of all, to be able to score a RANT, because that's the next step, to be able to score a RANT, you have to complete all 19 items. Now, remember, there's 2 items you could answer not applicable. Not applicable is a valid complete response. But if any of these say no answer, this mark as complete button will not light up. Okay. So you would have to make sure you answer all 19 items before that mark is complete. Now, as you're reviewing the answers or as you're comparing the client's responses to collateral information, if you realize you need to update one, let's say you need to change their serious misdemeanor convictions from 1 to 2, you'd click the edit next to that, you change the item to a 2, and you'd click save. Now, before I go on, you probably noticed that's the very first time I clicked save. The software automatically saves your responses as you move off of one screen to the next, okay? And this is important to know. In the event you're in the middle of an interview, let's say you're on item number 10, you typed in a response, but before you had a chance to click the next button, the internet goes down, okay? Lightning strike outside your building, internet goes down. Client sitting there. You grab your paper and pencil form and you write down the response for item number 10 and then finish the interview. Because your answer for item number 10 does not get saved until you move off that screen to the next screen, screen number 11. Okay, so that's important for you to remember, but it's automatically saving your data so that when the internet does come back up, you just log in, you're going to do a search, and it will automatically ask if you want to start the interview where you last stopped, and it will start on screen number 10. Okay, just something for you to be aware of. So let's say I reviewed all my responses, I made the edits I wanted to, and now I'm ready to mark it as complete. I click mark as complete and a window pops up and it says you will not be able to change responses once the interview is marked completed. Mark the interview as complete and view the report, yes or no. Remember, an interview must be marked as complete before a risk needs report is generated. So I'm going to click yes to mark it as complete, and it's going to automatically score your report and send it to the screen. And this is exactly what a hard copy of the report looks like. At the top of the screen, it's going to list the client's name, ID, date of birth, date of evaluation, gender, race, ethnicity, and the interviewer name is going to be pre-populated based upon how you entered your name when you created your RANT user account. Okay, so just a tip, if you want a more formal name to appear on all your reports, let's say I go by Meg Love, but I want on all the reports Megan Love, my more formal name, to appear. When you create your user account, use your formal name, okay? Directly below that is your 2x2 quadrant matrix, which has an X in one of the 4 quadrants. So this clearly has an X in the top left quadrant, which is high risk, high need. Directly below the quadrant graph, it's going to tell you in narrative form what the graph is telling you, which is this individual was classified as high risk and high need. Such individuals typically require a combination of services involving intensive treatment, close monitoring, and accountability for their actions. Directly below that, it's going to list the individual risk factors and need factors that were identified by administering the tool. So this client had unstable living arrangements, had an early age of onset of criminal activity, had prior felony or serious misdemeanor convictions, a prior involvement in drug rehabilitation, and deviant peer affiliations. As far as need factors, this client has a physical addiction to drugs or alcohol, as well as a chronic substance-related medical condition. Now, at the bottom of every report is a note that reminds you that this triage screen was not designed to be a clinical assessment tool and should not be used for treatment planning or diagnostic purposes. It was designed to identify those risks and needs for offenders that have been proven by research to predict a poor response to standard supervisory or treatment requirements. The goal is to use this information to match the offenders to those programs that are most likely to elicit the best outcomes. Now, if I scroll up to the top, there's a print button. If I click on it, a window is going to pop up at the bottom of the screen. And it actually downloads a copy of the report. So it might have been hard for you to see, but it was in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. When I click on that, here's your hard copy of the report. I can either click the print icon, okay? Obviously, the computer or laptop you're using has to be hooked up to a printer. That's under your control to print out a hard copy. Or you can click this download, okay, and then choose where you want to save that, whether it's on your network, on a thumb drive, on your hard drive of your computer. Because remember, you are only going to have access to the RANT for 30 days. After that, you will no longer have access to it. So it's critically important that you come up with a procedure to make sure you print out a hard copy and or save an electronic copy of the report. So make sure that you do that, okay? That's an important reminder. Now, let's go back to the main menu. One of the things people often ask, and it's also covered under the RANT FAQ, is what do you do after you've produced a report and you realize that you misentered something? You've already produced the report, and Megan told me once you produce the report, It is an uneditable record. Okay, so what do we do? Do I have to re-interview the client? You don't have to re-interview the client. So we're going to search for a recent interview. And when you do a search in RANT, you can search by any of the following criteria. You can search by client ID, first name, last name, DOB, date of birth, or gender. Now, if you're searching by name, I generally suggest you only put in the first couple letters of the client's first or last name. Here's why. Every once in a while, we get a panicked call on the helpline where someone says, I did a RANT yesterday and it disappeared from the database. It's gone. Okay. And the fact of the matter is it didn't disappear. It's not gone. It's just that RANT does an exact match search. So if you misspell the client's name, it's not going to find it. But if you just put in the first couple letters of the client's name and click the search button, you're more likely to find it. Okay. It's going to list any of the names of the clients that you've completed that match that criteria. Okay. So we're going to click select. And then it's going to show any of the RANT interviews that have appeared. Okay. So this is we completed that today. It's been completed. List the risk needs. I can view the report again if I want to. Now, I realize that I misentered something on Tracy's interview. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click view answers. Here's the 19 items and our answers. And I'm going to right click on the screen and click print. And I'm going to run over to the printer and make sure that her 19 answers printed off. And then I'm going to search for her again. There she is. And I'm actually going to delete her. Okay. But I don't have to re-interview her. All I have to do is re-data enter her, which is going to take me 2 to 3 minutes. I have her 19 responses. I know her client information because I printed out a report. I know, her name, her date of birth, etc. All I have to do is go to the main menu after I've deleted her and click start new interview, data enter it in. So it's going to take me another 2 to 3 minutes, but that is how you handle if you realize you misentered something. Okay. Now, another question I often get during training is, Megan, how often should we be ranting people? Okay. Because I saw when you did that search for Tracy Thomas, okay, that she had, when I click select, that she had one RANT interview. So should I be administering, 1 month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, when she's leaving court, how often should I be administering? The only time you should be administering another RANT is if the client has been rearrested and is re-presenting to your court and you are re-triaging them. The RANT, the risk and needs triage, is a triage tool. It is not meant for, and it was not designed to measure risk need change over time. Okay. So you would not be using the RANT like that, nor would you be using the DUI RANT like that. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. I'm going to log out of the RANT right now. And now I'm going to go into the DUI RANT. Okay. So I'm going to close some of these windows and go to www.trirant.org DUI RANT online. Okay. So while the RANT is RANT online, DUI RANT is DUI RANT online. And just like with the RANT, when I press enter, it's going to redirect me to a more secure site. It's an HTTPS. It's got the little lock in here and it looks just like the RANT website, but it has the DUI RANT logo. Okay. So everything still applies that we talked about. I'm going to log on. And by the way, if you have a RANT and a DUI RANT account, just something for you to be aware of, they're completely, right now, currently, they're 2 completely separate applications. So you can have the same username and password for both. You just have to make sure that you're logging into the correct link. So you've got the same main menu, you've got the same links in the top right-hand corner. But we're going to start a new interview so I can show you the difference and go over the additional items that are only in the DUI RANT. Okay, so we're going to put in a different client. Thomas. Okay, let's say he's a junior. Now you'll notice that in the DUI rant, there's one additional gender option. That is because the DUI rant was developed after the rant. So we decided to add a transgender option. At some point, your courts are going to be moved to our new rant portal. And in our new rant portal, we've actually added some additional options under gender, including non-binary. So you will see that as well. So just that's the reason why there's differences in the tools is because they were developed later and we decided, to make some updates, but did not update the original rant. The response options are still the same for race and ethnicity. And we put in today's date and begin the interview. So you're going to see that there is overlap in some of the items. Current age is the same as it is in the rant, so I'm going to quickly go through it. There's also age of onset of criminal activity. Now, by the way, you'll notice there's a coding rule that does not appear in the rant. It should be used the same way in both the rant and the DUI rant. You're not going to include illicit substance use as criminal activity in either rant or DUI rant. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly put in some data here. Now, this item is similar to an item that's in the rant, but the wording slightly different. We're looking at the number of prior DUI or drug diversion, so it doesn't have de novo referrals listed. And we list some of the examples right there at the top of the screen. So essentially, we're looking for the same thing. We're looking to see if the client has been in a diversion program, okay, in the, in their lifetime, okay? So this client has not. Now, this item is similar to a rant item. It's the number of prior DUI convictions, okay? So we did not ask that specifically in the rant. We're asking it in the DUI rant, and you're including all prior DUI convictions. This item is similar, item number 5, to one that is in the rant. However, you're excluding DUI convictions because we just asked that in item number 4. We're counting any type of DUI conviction under item number 4, whether it's felony or misdemeanor. But here we're counting prior non-DUI felony convictions. And just like in the rant, we're only counting convictions. We're only counting the instance of the conviction, okay? And here we're counting non-DUI felony convictions. So it's very straightforward. Item number 6, again, very similar to a rant item. However, we, just like the previous item, we're excluding non-DUI because item number 4 specifically asks about all DUI convictions. Again, we're looking at serious misdemeanors. We're only counting convictions. We're counting the instance of the conviction, and we list examples. And we want you to list those examples because that's what we're targeting. This is what we mean by serious misdemeanors. So you're going to list those: misdemeanor assault, domestic assault, etc. Just like in the rant, you're not including resisting arrest or disorderly conduct, and you're excluding all juvenile convictions except for those in which they were charged as an adult. Okay, this item is only in the DUI rant, the number of prior moving violations. Now, with this item, you'll have some clients who have many, many moving violations. You are not going to spend 10 minutes and asking them to list them all so that you get an exact number. Really, once you get beyond 10, ask them to give their best estimate, okay? So you really don't need to sit there and spend 10 minutes pinpointing the exact number of moving violations, especially for those clients that have many of them, okay? Just have them to give their very best estimate of the number of prior moving violations they've had. And this client has had 3. This item asks the number of times the client's driver's license has been suspended or revoked. Okay, in other words, how many times did they not have a valid driver's license? This client, it's been 1 time. you'll see in the rant, a lot of these items are very straightforward. This one is valid driver's license at the time of the current DUI arrest. So we want to know what at their current DUI arrest at that time, was their driver's license valid? Yes or no? Okay. Item number 10 asks age of onset of regular alcohol or drug use. This item is in both the RANT and the DUI RANT, the exact same item, should be administered the same way. As well as this item, item number 11, number of prior alcohol and drug abuse treatment episodes or attempts. Same item in both RANT and DUI RANT. This item is also in RANT as well. The amount of time during the past 12 months spent interacting with other people or engaged in criminal activity, including illicit drug use. This item, item number 13, is only in the RANT. We want to know the number of times the client has been fired, suspended, expelled for reasons related to their alcohol or drug use. So what we're looking here is past experiences of the client being removed from major obligations such as job or school due to their alcohol or drug use. That's what we're looking at. So we're looking the number of times they've been fired, suspended from a job or school, or expelled because of their alcohol or drug use. Item number 14 is just like it is in the RANT, same exact item. Okay, number of address changes. As is item number 15, also in the RANT, homeless during the past 12 months, yes or no? We already reviewed that item. As we reviewed this item, item number 16, number of months in the past 12 months engaged in regular legal employment for 20 more hours per week. Item number 17 is only in the DUI RANT. It's BAC at time of arrest. So you're literally either going to type in what their BAC was, okay? If the client at the time of their arrest, they refused to give the BAC, you could click refused. Or if you don't have their BAC and it's not because they refuse, you click not applicable. Because remember, you're going to have to fill in one of these. Otherwise, you won't be able to score your DUI RANT. Okay. So you're going to either type in their BAC if you have it. If they refused, and that's why you don't have a BAC, you click refused. Or if you just don't have it, you'd click not applicable. Okay. This item we already went over. It's in the RANT as well. Whether they experienced withdrawal syndrome in the past 12 months, yes or no. As well as this item, item number 19, did they experience binge use and loss of control in the past 12 months? Same item as well. Item number 20, also in the RANT, experienced cravings or compulsions in the past 12 months, yes or no? And because the DUI RANT, was developed after the RANT, we updated the wording. So it's the same exact item as the major access 1 mental health diagnosis that's in the RANT. We just updated the wording to serious psychiatric disorder diagnosis, but all the coding rules here are the same. We just happen to move some of the content from the more info into the coding rule box. So yes or no, you're going to function with that item the same. Okay. This item, item number 2, is the same that's in the RANT, whether the client has a chronic substance abuse related medical condition. And then finally, item number 23 is acute substance abuse related injury in the past 12 months. Okay. So this is the item. So the difference, it's important, the difference between item 22 and item 23. Item 22, that chronic medical condition, okay, that's either directly caused by or severely exacerbated, okay? If you count something there in 22, you're not double counting it in 23, okay? So 22 are for those long-term medical conditions. You know, whether it's a chronic medical, condition that they have, it has to be directly caused by or severely exacerbated by their substance use. This is 23, an injury, an acute Acute means short term, okay? So let's say they were intoxicated and they were walking down the street and they tripped on the curb and they twisted their ankle. That would, if that happened in the past 12 months, you'd count that as a yes, okay? Or, they fell down and they got a black eye. You would count that as a yes. I would count if they were intoxicated and they got in a fight and then got injured in the fight. I would count that here as well, okay? So that's the last item that is in the DUI rant. And we click, the next button becomes review answers button, okay? You're going to function here just like you do with the rant. This is your opportunity to verify the accuracy of the information. If you have collateral information, such as their criminal justice records, make sure all of these are filled out, that none say no answer, edit as needed. Then when you're ready, you mark it as complete. Same window pops up. You'll not be able to change responses once the interview is marked complete. Mark it as complete. Yes. It's going to produce the report. There's your report. Same format as the rant. Your client demographics at the top. This client scored as high risk, low need. So you have a different statement below here. This individual is classified as high risk and low need. Such individuals typically require close monitoring and accountability for their actions. They typically do not require intensive treatment services. Okay, it's going to list the individual risk factors. This client had prior DUI convictions, had prior non-DUI serious misdemeanor convictions, was fired, suspended, or expelled, had unstable living arrangements. And the need factor, they had an acute substance abuse related injury, but notice that it did not trigger high need. Has the same note at the bottom. You can print, because you remember, you're still going to want to print your reports, because after 30 days, you won't have access. You can print or click the download and save them, okay? And it all functions the same. Okay, so we ended a little bit early. I'm happy to try and address the couple questions that are in there, if you'd like me to, Anna.
Okay.
Otherwise,
it's totally up to you, Megan. I have 4 questions. I don't know if we want to just maybe do one and then whatever we get to before 12, and then we can just.
that sounds great.
Okay, so the first one is from Kelly Clark, and she's asking what should be done in regards to the 12 months prior to incarceration qualifier if the client was in jail for a few months but has now been out for a few months. I hope that question is clear.
So if they've been out for a few months, you're going to ask them, that's a great question. I would ask them about the time around it. So I would subtract those month period. That's a great question. Actually, I've never had that question before. So you're asking them about any of the time they weren't in the jail. Okay. So that, let's say they were back, 5 months, then you're going to ask them about the time before they were in jail, but you're just, excluding that time they were in jail.
Thank you. The next question is from Cher, and she's asking, what if they were incarcerated the whole time before and they incarcerated and engaged with other inmates in activity? I've had them bring that up to me and answer yes.
Yeah, so you're not, none of this is going to be coded based upon their time while they were incarcerated. Okay, that's not, we're excluding that. All those questions about the 12 months, you're excluding about their 12 months of incarceration. Okay.
Thank you. And then this one is more, not really a question, just more of a comment. It's asking why we're still using the stigmatizing term offender.
Of offender? I'm sorry, I was having.
Yeah, offender,
That's what I try in my trainings to refer to them as clients. I hear what you're saying about the wording in the tool. Great question. Certainly something I'll bring back to the scientists in considering and updating moving forward. We certainly have tried to do that when we do move you to the new RANT, and then at some point we'll also be moving the DUI RANT to our new portal, and we will be moving you guys over time to those. We have updated some of the wording, so we've dropped the terminology of substance abuse to substance use. And we have tried to remove some of that stigmatizing language. So I think TRI and PHMC as scientists, we have been better about it. I will say that the software is a little bit older. Again, the RANT was developed in 2008. So we have, tried to do that, but I would definitely take that comment back to our scientists and work to do better on that. So thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Megan. And then there's just one more question. Would there ever be a situation where we would complete both a RANT and DUI RANT on the same individual?
So I'm trying to think. I guess if a client was arrested and was being charged with both a drug charge and a DUI, keep in mind that a lot of obviously there's significant overlap in the two items. So, you're likely a client who's going to score as high risk in RANT is going to score as high risk in the DUI. However, obviously, we did develop the DUI because RANT version, because we felt it was important that, because DUI offenders are different than drug offenders, that, we not use it. Actually, New Mexico, you guys were one of the first ones that utilized the DUI RANT and helped us to refine it. And that's why one was developed. So I would say that is when you would do it is if a client's been arrested and charged with both drug charges and a DUI at the same time. I'd be curious if you have that instance happen. I'd be curious. Let me know if their risk need scores are different. I would doubt it, but it would be interesting to see.
Or perhaps like a domestic violence charge and they pick up a DUI charge. So we've got both. And
yes, potentially you could do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Well, I've put up my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me specifically if you have a question about something I discussed during the training. But of course, the reason we ask you to contact the customer support is there's a whole team of people. So if I'm in a meeting, if I'm out of the office, if I'm on vacation, we definitely, want someone to get back to you. So it's really best to, if it's, a true customer support, reach us at rantsupport@phmc.org. If you prefer telephone call, just, if we don't pick up, leave a voicemail, we'll get right back to you. And I just want to note, I'm going to be at the NADCP conference in Houston at the end of June. If you happen to be there, please stop by our booth. We'll have a booth and stop by and say hi. I would love to meet you all face to face. So thanks so much for your attention, your great questions. And, best of luck to you guys moving forward. Thank you for using RANT and the DUI RANT. We appreciate you.
And Megan, I want to thank you one last time for being with us and taking the time to do this. I also want to thank all of our nearly 100 attendees. And as we started the whole process this morning, I also want to thank them for the use of this instrument and their continuing work with our probationers, because that really does make a difference in New Mexico when we understand the people we're working with and we're matching services and the depth of services and the breadth of services to the needs of the individual, and the RANT helps us do that. So thank you, Megan, and thank you everybody that attended. We'll see you all later.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, Megan.